western fringe of Britain, so important to the origins of Britain and to its monarchy. We will peer behind the veil of Arthurian myth, histories of Roman Britain, and archaeology to find out who are the Welsh. Hi friends, I'm Kevin McLean. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and consider supporting me on Patreon, PayPal, or now directly through YouTube. Your support helps me to continue to make content like this. Much thanks to all of my supporters. The Welsh are known in their own language as the Cymry. The name for the country, Cymru, comes from the plural form of an early Proto-Brythonic, Combrogos, meaning compatriots or countrymen. The name Cambria is the Latinized version of this name, and it was used by the people to refer to themselves as an ethnic group, as well as the lands which they occupied, at least since the 7th century, though very likely even before this. The origin of the name Welsh comes from an Old English word, Welas, inherited into Proto-Germanic from a name for a Gaulish tribe, the Volcae, who bordered Germanic regions. It was used to denote a foreigner, and perhaps specifically Romanized ones. In Old Norse, Valskr referred to French. Within their own ancestral island, the Cymry came to be called foreigners. Cymraeg, the name of the language, along with Breton, are surviving descendants of the tongue once spoken across almost all of Britain, known as Common Brythonic. Though there has been wide debate about when and how the Celtic language came to Britain, recent genetic studies paired with linguistic analysis suggest a late Bronze Age date, tied to movements of people originating in Central and Western Europe, possibly related to the Urnfield culture. During this period, the Celtic language spread through western France and into Iberia, south into northern Italy, and north across the Channel into Britain and Ireland. This spread was facilitated by population migration combined with elite dominance. In Britain and Ireland, a Celtic-speaking elite took possession of the land, most likely through the institution of the young male warrior bands common across Indo-European society, and which persisted in the Gaelic traditions of the Fianna. This Celtic migration did not affect all places equally, however. Mainland Celtic immigration into Ireland appears to have been relatively limited, based on present genetic findings, pointing to a small elite takeover that spread the language and customs of elite society among an already very similar Indo-European originated Bell Beaker population. Many local customs appear to have been relatively unchanged. In Britain, however, a larger shift occurred, reflecting a larger Celtic immigration from the mainland, certainly due to their proximity. Within the historical period, we are informed by Roman writers that there were close links between a number of British and Gaulish tribes. During Julius Caesar's war in Gaul, a number of Gaulish tribes and individual bands fled into Britain. We also see that a number of tribal names appear similar or are the same as their Gaulish counterparts. Caesar recorded that the Druids of Gaul used to receive teaching in Britain, where they believed that their order originated. This may provide evidence for a degree of mutual intelligibility between Gaulish and Brythonic at that time, or bilingualism, and the belief that both languages and people were anciently related. Though the Brythonic language shares certain features with the Goidelic, such that they are grouped together as insular Celtic languages, Brythonic also has features of the Gaulish language, and these elements are primarily what separate it from Irish. Though Proto-Celtic did not retain the Indo-European P sound, both Gaulish and Brythonic adopted it, creating the distinction known as P-Celtic and Q-Celtic. How and when this happened is a matter of debate, but shows that Brythonic was under heavy Gaulish influence. This seems to have extended even into the north. Pictish, for instance, shows several signs of having been P-Celtic, with numerous place names containing the word pit. Welsh history begins with the earliest history of the British Isles. Unlike the Picts, whose ancient independent identity was largely destroyed by the Gaels and the English, a continuous Welsh identity has endured, consciously linked to the Iron Age British leaders who fought against the Romans. Though it can be argued that much of what the medieval Welsh knew about that history came from Roman writers, they recognized themselves as the descendants of those people. And from the fragments of folklore that survive, we can see that there was a lively folk history of the period, which told of fictional events such as Casavolana sneaking into the camp of Julius Caesar as a shoemaker in order to win back his love, Fleur, whom the emperor had taken. Such a story likely plays off the myths of Celtic gods. Though the Welsh trace their identity back to the Iron Age British, that identity was not politically unified. A good comparison for it is the classical Greek world, where many different city-states made alliances or warred against each other, yet also recognized their common Greekness. Likewise, though there were various tribal kingdoms in Britain, and they often fought with each other, when faced against a common enemy, many of them instinctively united. Events like the invasion of Julius Caesar between 55 and 54 BC, and later with Claudius in 43 AD, show that the vast majority of British kingdoms united their forces in order to defend the island from outside invaders. Though more distant from the well-known political power centers which engaged politically with Gaul and Rome, Iron Age Wales was not a backwater. It may even have been the spiritual heart of Iron Age Britain. The remains of a massive man-made hill fort and palatial complex still stands along the northwest coast of Caernarfon, Dinas Dinsay. From its top one can see the island of Anglesey, Ynys Môn in Welsh, where the Druids were said to have concentrated after the Roman invasion. Over the past 2,500 years, the sea has claimed about 50% of the site, but it's estimated that in its original state, it may have been one of the largest Iron Age sites of its kind in Britain. Its name means Fortress of Lug, or Lugus, a frequent name for fortification sites across the ancient Celtic world, highlighting the god's martial nature, which features in surviving myths among the Cymry and the Gaels. One aspect that set the Britons of Iron Age Wales apart from their cousins in England or Scotland is that they did not seem to have used much pottery, suggesting a distinct regional culture. We know of several tribal groupings from the region of modern Wales during the time of Roman contact. One was the Demetai, from which we get the later Welsh name Dyfed, which occupies the same region as its ancient progenitors, and in myth was ruled by Pwll, the lord of Dyfed, who once changed places with Arawn, the lord of the underworld. The Silures were to their east, and Romans remarked that in appearance they looked far more like the Gauls or Spanish, evidence perhaps for the larger mainland Celtic immigration into the region. To the north were the Ordovices. Caratacus, the chief of the Catovalani, gained refuge among them after his defeat in the east, and led both the Ordovices and the Silures in war against the Romans for almost a decade, until his betrayal at the hands of Cartmandua of the Brigantes. After the fall of southeastern England to the Romans in 43, it took decades and numerous Roman military campaigns to subdue the Welsh kingdoms. According to the Roman historian Tacitus, the Druids of Britain had gathered at Anglesey after the conquest of southeastern Britain. The Romans believed that they were instrumental in mounting a united resistance to their rule and led an assault against them. This major Roman venture into Wales was cut short by the rebellion of the Iceni led by Boudicca, and it would not be until 78 AD that the Roman conquest of Wales was completed. The Romans established numerous forts in Wales, which formed the basis of several important towns. Caersion, for example, began as a fortification for the Second Augusta Legion after they had conquered the Silures in 74. Other Roman sites, like Tomini feature in Welsh medieval tales. In the Mabinogi, before Say became king, he was given rule of Ardudwy, an old local name for Tomini the remains of a rather isolated Roman fortification. All the events of the tale can actually be mapped out to nearly the exact places mentioned in the story, including the hill from which first Gronu and then Say cast his spear, which broke through the stone. The Roman conquest left clear marks on the geography of Wales as well as the minds of the people. The Welsh name for the British people, Brython, actually comes from a Latin rendering of the Brythonic Prytany, which became the Welsh word Prydain, referring exclusively to the Picts. In other words, the British of southern England by the time of the Roman abandonment of Britain had come to see themselves to some extent through the lens of the Romans. They were not exactly Romans, but they were changed. They were not identical to what they once were. This is the effect of long-term colonization. The Roman Emperor Magnus Maximus, though short-lived, played a crucial role in the formation of the Welsh and Breton identity, and is preserved not only in legend, but as a founder of numerous royal lines in medieval genealogical tracts. A Welsh legend called the Dream of Maxen Ulidic praises him as the wisest and best emperor that had ever lived. He has a dream where he sees a great and powerful lord with the most beautiful daughter in the world, and he falls in love with her. It turns out that this man is Eaddyf, the son of Caradoc, and king of Britain, who resides in a great castle at Caernarvon, and his daughter is Helen. Maxen goes to Britain, and Eaddyf gives his daughter to Maxen, who agrees to give rule to him over all Britain. When Maxen is ousted as emperor, Eaddyf's two sons, Cynan and Adeon, help lead the war effort to reclaim his rule, conquering all the way to Rome. When the war is over, Cynan remains in Gaul and founds Brittany. The concept, down to the details of the dream, show it to be of ancient Celtic origin. It has direct parallels to Irish mythology. Eaddyf is the high god of heaven. His daughter, or sometimes wife, is the goddess of sovereignty, whom he bestows upon the king. And his two sons are the twin sons of heaven, who give aid to the king in battle. Almost to the exact same tale is mentioned in a Welsh triad concerning two sons of Erenrod. They are named Gwanar and Gwynwynwyn, elsewhere named Say and Dylan, who lead the armies of Caswallawn in a conquest of the Roman Empire. This can be directly compared to Greek mythology, where Zeus is the father of Helen and her two twin brothers Castor and Pollux. There is also such a connection made in some Irish sources between the Dioscuri, Helen, and the god Lugh. The provided genealogy calls Eaddyf the son of Caradoc, while in the Harleian genealogy it says Say hen map Gwydion map Caradoc, meaning Say, the son of Gwydion, the son of Caratacus, showing that though the names may be different, there are underlying parallels that cannot be a coincidence. Maximus may have played an oversized role in Welsh legends, because he may have been the emperor who returned local rule to the British. It may even have been at this time that the initial British kingdoms were established, of which Gwynedd, Powys, and Dyfed, and the northern kingdoms like Rheged, are but a few that we know of. While the post-Roman political structure in Britain is unclear, it is very likely that some type of political arrangements were made, and that Emperor Maximus may have had a hand in that organization. When Maximus left Britain, many of the garrison troops left with him, never to return. Just as in the legend, it's believed that some of these troops were of British origin, and that these soldiers may have ended up settling in the region of Brittany, leading to the legend of Cynan. With the onset of the Saxon invasion, many more Britons would follow them out of the country, fleeing to Brittany, and even to some locations in Spain. Their legacy is still present in Brittany, home to one of the surviving Celtic languages of the Brythonic branch. By the time Rome left Britain, much of the elite of the southern part of the island had become, like in Gaul, very Romanized. All the elite would have been fluent in Latin, and the language left its mark on Welsh also. At least some of the British elite had come to think of themselves as Romans. For those in the north or in the far west, like Wales, the situation on the ground was likely very much different than in London. Though the elite there also spoke Latin, the region was far less influenced by Rome, and this can also be seen in archaeology, where many of the common people lived lives very little different as those from before Claudius ever sailed across the channel with his elephants. It may have been this un-Roman lifestyle of the provincials that allowed these areas to cope better with the Roman retreat, and to withstand hundreds of years of bitter conflict that followed. Though geography also plays a critical part, being further from the eastern channel crossings and partially shielded by mountainous terrain. Gildas, a Welsh monk, Grumpy Gildas as I call him for his constant berating of his countrymen, tell us that most of the Britons rejoiced when the Romans left, happy to return to their barbarism. This may well have been the view of common people of Wales, who were happy to be free of taxes, and many others who were still pagans at the time, unhappy with the Romans having shuttered their temples. Gildas viewed even the Welsh Christians as bad Christians, living in heresy, and this was a view shared by later English and Irish clergy. The details about this Welsh Christianity are not precisely laid out, but they are often accused of Pelagianism, and some believe that Pelagius was from Wales, although possibly Ireland. A flavor of that Christianity can be tasted in some of the medieval Welsh poetry, often ascribed to Taliesin, although more likely written by bards who were invoking him and were possessed by his poetic spirit. I have been with skilful men, with Mathe and Govannon, with Einith and Elestron, in company with Achwison, for a year in Caer Govannon. I am old, I am young, I am Gwion, I am universal, I am possessed of penetrating wit. Thou wilt remember thy old Brython and the Gwyddel, kiln distillers intoxicating the drunkards. I am a bard. I will not disclose secrets to slaves. I am a guide. I am an expert in contests. Though these sentiments are presented also in Irish works, they reach a certain mystical perfection in the early medieval Welsh poetry. Taliesin, or these bards writing as him, were not lone cranks, but performed their work in the halls of lords and were greatly honored, despite promoting a mixture of pagan and Christian mystic ideas. Of course, the biggest event, the most important by far that shapes the identity of the modern Welsh, is the Anglo-Saxon invasion. Welsh legend says that they were invited in by a foolish and corrupt British king, Vortigern. After the Romans left, they were suffering greatly from raids by the Picts and Scots, and so they recruited Saxon mercenaries who, when realizing the British were vulnerable, turned on them. There is likely some truth behind this legend, but those Saxon mercenaries may have been in Britain before the Romans ever left. Germanic soldiers, including mercenaries, served the Roman administration in Britain. This can be proved by Roman period inscriptions bearing Germanic names. An altar dedicated to Mars Thingus is known in Britain, Mars of the Assembly, likely an epithet for the Germanic god Tyr, or Tiw in Old English. Saxon mercenaries were likely brought on by the Romano-British administration to help curb raids of their fellow tribesmen, and they likely continued on in Britain after the Roman troops pulled out. Maximus's withdrawal did not clear out all Roman troops and auxiliaries from Britain, though. Men were still garrisoned at Hadrian's Wall, for instance. There was some evidence that Stilicho, the half-German de facto caretaker emperor, launched a retaliation against the Picts between 396 and 398. But in 402, facing down the might of the advancing Visigoths, Stilicho recalled to the mainland the garrison of Hadrian's Wall. The local administration still had some troops positioned in cities and forts, but these soldiers were now no longer receiving money from Rome, nor were any mercenary forces that may have been employed. These troops may have gone years without receiving official compensation, possibly being supported by local governments or even acting as bandits themselves. By 406, the troops in Britain were in open revolt. In 407, they declared Constantine III emperor. We know nothing about his background, but it is even possible that he was a Roman born in Britain, in one of the Roman colonies there. He and the remaining troops in Britain crossed the Channel and fought to halt the Germanic invasion into Gaul. The Roman forces in Gaul supported him, and he actually did become emperor. But like most during that period, he was dead before the close of 411. It's possible that he was a Romano-British emperor, having been born and raised in Britain, though probably to ethnic Roman parents. Yet in all this chaos and the withdrawal of all major Roman forces from Britain, at a time when they were facing disastrous raiding, certainly must have spurred the administration to find some means of defense. It's entirely believable that Saxons who had been serving the Romans and had already settled along the coastal defenses of Britain were kept in the employ of the now adrift Romano-British administration, as their weakness became increasingly apparent, and possibly their ability to pay expired. These mercenaries decided to take land instead of gold, and rather than repelling their cousins, invited them in to expand their settlements and wrest control from a crumbling administration, just as their Germanic cousins had been doing throughout Gaul and Italy at the exact same time. By the year 410, Greek historian Zosimus said of the situation in Britain, "They rejected Roman law, reverted to their native customs, and armed themselves to ensure their own safety." The Emperor Honorius may have responded to a British request for aid against the Saxons in the same year, saying they would have to manage their own defense. Given that in 410 Rome itself was sacked by the Visigoths, there was in fact nothing the Roman administration could do to help Britain. They were now well and truly on their own, facing the same massive challenges that all those across Western Europe faced at that time: migrants. Starting even before the Romans officially left Britain, but greatly accelerating thereafter, constant raiding was making trade and advanced economic activity in the country almost impossible. The cities of Britain were now cut off from their economic lifeline and became depopulated. London went from being the biggest urban center in the country to being almost totally depopulated. Colchester, another important center, had fields within the city walls, and many other cities across Britain were entirely or mostly abandoned at this time, as people fled to the countryside in order to scrape together a living from the soil. In the east, Saxons were flooding in, and not only pillaging the land, but grabbing lands and building up kingdoms of their own. Initially, it's possible that the first settlements were actually given by the local administration as a form of payment, but gradually they expanded by force. Along the Welsh coast, Gaels were raiding and settling as well. Massive numbers of British at this time decided that all was lost. They took whatever they could on a ship and set out for Brittany, or even the more exotic Spain, where small British colonies established themselves in this period of pure chaos. It was in that almost unimaginable period of darkness and desperation that the legends of King Arthur emerge. There are many different views on Arthur. My own view is that he is largely the creation of legend, a compilation of real kings and war leaders, mixed with ideas originating in British pagan mythology. Such is often the case with folktales about historical figures, even in modern times. One historical figure he certainly merges with is Aurelius Ambrosius, who is mentioned by Gildas and identified by Bede and Nennius as having led the Britons in the Battle of Badon Hill, where he is credited with stopping the advance of the Saxons for a time. Later histories switch Aurelius for Arthur, or say that Arthur was Aurelius's key knight. Geoffrey of Monmouth creates a mythical tale about Aurelius, known as Emrys in Welsh, which seems to combine him with tales of Merddin Wyllt, and in some Arthurian tales he becomes the brother of Uther Pendragon, father of Arthur. The further in time one moves away from the time when Arthur is said to have existed, the more one hears about him from so-called historians. This is very likely because folktales spreading among the population about this period had popularized a figure that they called Arthur, and this was so widespread it was generally believed, especially as there are no written records from this time. His legend mirrors that of a number of European gods, and in his earliest tales, he is often directly associated with pagan gods or even has them in his retinue. Though likely not ever a living person, the idea of Arthur became an important expression for the great heroes and kings during that hazy time when the existence of the British people balanced on a knife's edge. Later kings, especially kings of Welsh origin, claimed to trace their lineage to him. Chosen by heaven, he was believed to have united all the Britons, from the Old North to Cornwall, in a common struggle against the Saxons. During that period, something like this must have occurred, with even grumpy Gildas claiming that the Britons were able to unite and halt the Saxons, even retake some lands. Yet it was not to last. With the fall of our historical Arthurs, the Saxons would continue their push west and north. By 600, the Saxon kingdom of Northumbria conquered the British kingdom of Godolphin, whose centre was at Edinburgh. Their defeat is memorialized in one of the earliest Welsh poems called O Godolphin. One of the earliest kings of Gwynedd had moved to Wales from the north, and the connections were especially strong between them. The Battle of Chester in 616 saw the fall of another northern British kingdom, that of Rheged, also highly memorialized by the medieval Welsh bards. This victory seems to have severed the Welsh from their northern brothers, such as the British kingdom of Strathclyde, which continued for several hundred years before being absorbed into the kingdom of Scotland. In the south, they were already cut off from a land connection to Cornwall, but by this time there was already a growing sense of the Cymry as isolated from other British people, increasingly sealed off by the Saxons. This sense soon became a reality with the creation of Offa's Dyke. It was a massive defensive dike that ran nearly the entire length of Wales, north to south, roughly matching the borders as they exist today. It was named after a powerful king of Mercia who ruled between 757 and 796. Though there is some argument if the date of the wall actually matches this period of Offa, historical accounts from roughly the same time attest to it, and it matches the Powys-Mercian border and makes the most sense. Offa's Dyke is nonetheless the most massive construction undertaking of the period, being 152 kilometers long and up to 65 feet wide. Just as Hadrian's Wall had a mental effect on the Picts, Offa's Dyke may have imposed a similar idea on the Cymry. They were sealed off behind a barrier in what used to be their own land. But the Cymry didn't accept any of these events as passive spectators. This overview misses the many battles that were being fought all through this period, the raiding of territories back and forth. But by 800 AD, the Anglo-Saxons had pushed the Welsh to near their current boundaries. Many blame the disunity of the native Britons for their failure to repel the Anglo-Saxons, but we have to have a broader perspective here. The Anglo-Saxons themselves were not unified until much later, for instance. Instead, a number of factors seem to have come together that disadvantaged the Britons. The disorganization during the collapse of the Roman Empire meant they were politically unprepared. The Romanized elite in the southeast seem to have been less interested in fighting. In part, this sentiment can be seen in the mass flight of the population to Brittany. Finally, the numbers of Saxons who were coming into Britain may have been far more massive than some had previously suspected. Recent genetic studies suggest that, contrary to some previous theories, there was in fact a very large population turnover in southeast England, which saw most of the population there replaced by Anglo-Saxons. As one moves west, those numbers decrease, with more blending with the local population over time, but there can be little doubt that the Saxons came in very large numbers, likely comparable to the mass migrations of Goths, Lombards, Franks, and others who took over Italy and Gaul and Iberia. If even these places could not withstand the Germanic migration, we can look at how the native British were able to manage it as a great success. In 1055, Griffith ap Llywelyn became the first king to have dominion over all Wales. The English under Edward the Confessor recognized his claim through the influence of Griffith's close ally, Alfgar, Earl of Mercia. Yet when Alfgar died in 1062, it left the Godwin brothers, Harold and Tostig, in almost complete control of England. Angered by the earlier political interference by Griffith, and likely threatened by a politically united Wales, they gained Edward's permission to launch an attack. Caught off guard, Griffith only just managed to escape by ship the advancing armies of Northumbria and Wessex. The Godwin brothers managed to win the submission of the other Welsh lords within a year, and Griffith was forced into hiding in the mountains of Snowdonia. An Irish account says that he was killed there, betrayed by a fellow Welshman who held a grudge against him for having had his father executed 20 years earlier. His head was sent to Harold as a trophy. Though Harold had conquered Wales and gained hostages from the lords, he restored the traditional kingdoms, creating a once again divided Wales, which swore to give homage and loyalty to the English crown. Thus, while defeated, they retained most of their political autonomy. The English victory was certainly far from long-lived, however. By the close of 1066, just 3 short years later, Harold was killed in the Battle of Hastings, and the Normans ruled over England, but not Wales. While England fell to the Normans, Wales continued in independence. Attempts were made to take Wales, but it wasn't until 1094 that most of Wales came under Norman control, and this control was tenuous. As much as the Welsh may have disliked the English, they seemed to despise the Normans as brutal thugs. In 1101, the Welsh began a rebellion, in part under the leadership of King Griffith ap Cynan, who had escaped a Norman prison where he had spent 11 years. Through warfare, uprisings, and negotiations, the Welsh managed to regain political control over much of Wales. In 1157 and 1165, renewed attempts to subdue the Welsh were made by King Henry II, but each was unsuccessful. By 1277, Wales was again moving towards a situation of political unity. The princes of Gwynedd had managed to secure power over the other princes of Wales, and began to take the title Prince of Wales. One of the last Welshmen to hold the title in full was Llywelyn ap Griffith. Llywelyn was an assertive leader who made enemies, including his own younger brother Dafydd, who defected to the English. Tensions between Llywelyn and King Edward I rose when the Prince of Wales refused to abide by the terms of an agreement he had signed with Edward's father, King Henry III, which had given English recognition to Llywelyn's title of Prince of Wales, in exchange for paying homage to the English monarchy. When Henry died, Llywelyn refused to turn up to a meeting to pay homage to the new king, and it was taken as a sign that Llywelyn was planning disloyalty. Unfortunately, because Llywelyn had made many enemies, and because English lords were now occupying parts of South Wales, the army Edward raised against him was around half Welsh, or even more. That doesn't mean that the Welsh wished to fight against Llywelyn. They didn't have a choice if they were called up by their lords. It might rather show that Edward wished to use the Welsh to fight the Welsh, to drive a wedge between them internally, and lose as few English troops in the fighting as possible. A cynical, callous maneuver. After about a year of fighting, Llywelyn offered a surrender, and in November 1277 signed the Treaty of Aberconwy, which left him with a small portion of Gwynedd, while Edward and Llywelyn's brother claimed the remaining. Most of Wales became either directly controlled English royal lands or English protectorates at this time. Barely anything was left of Welsh sovereignty. But in a surprise move, Llywelyn's brother, Dafydd, who had earlier sided with the English, turned against them a few years later and began a rebellion. It has been suggested that he felt cheated by what he was given by King Edward in exchange for his betrayal, but we should not altogether discount that it did not sit well with him for Wales to be under direct English rule. Certainly it was a sentiment felt by many. Their entire history since the fall of the Roman Empire had been about resisting Saxon rule, and now they had finally succumbed. Together with many lords throughout Wales, their uprising turned into a national struggle. It wasn't long before Llywelyn joined the fight as well, despite what must have been the deep sense of betrayal he held for his brother. They initially scored some big victories against the forces of Gloucester, but when Llywelyn was lured into a trap and killed during the Battle of Orwyn Bridge, it took a bad turn. In June of 1283, Dafydd ap Griffith, now the heir to the title Prince of Wales after the death of his brother Llywelyn, was captured, sent to Shrewsbury, and executed as a traitor. The military resistance to England was crushed. Though the lands of Wales were not incorporated into England at this point, all sense of Welsh political independence was effectively dead. There were still important Welsh nobles who were committed to maintaining Welsh culture and language and history, and who wished that they could resist the English, but they were relegated to administrators of English-controlled territories. Many of the major castles that everyone loves in Wales date to the Edwardian period. To ensure English domination over the Welsh, castles were built throughout the land, not to protect the people, but to subjugate them. Castles made it very difficult for local revolts against unpopular English lords to succeed, as peasants have little means to besiege a castle. The lands of Wales were treated as the King of England's personal fiefdom, and Edward bestowed them on his son, his heir, Edward of Carnarvon, and gave him the title, sardonically perhaps, Prince of Wales. Ever since that day, in 1301, every English monarch has done the same, bestowing the same title and rights to his or her heir apparent. Presently, that is William, Prince of Wales. The present monarchy is chosen to be a symbolic and rather useless institution through not exercising any of their power to do anything. So whether this actually has a significant impact today can be debated, but the symbolism of giving the heir apparent the title of Prince of Wales did not begin innocently. It began as an open show of force over a subjugated people whose lands were taken in military conquest by Edward, King of England. And you might think this is the depressing end you knew was coming, but it isn't. Though Wales had been conquered by the English, their history and sense of identity was too deep to be erased. Despite Edward's conquest and the creation of many fortresses of oppression, uprisings continued. The most famous and greatly successful of these took place in 1400, when the legendary Owain Glyndŵr claimed his hereditary title, Prince of Wales. Owain was not just a rebel or a noble seeking to elevate his standing, but a true patriot. He was also highly intelligent, able to win victories on the battlefield and in diplomacy. He was such a towering figure that some later English accounts describe him as a sorcerer, able to summon up storms and lightning to oppose the English forces. Shakespeare said, "He called spirits from the vast misty deep." This was the kind of impression that was left of him in the popular consciousness. With the 100 Years' War between England and France still slogging on, Owain cleverly won allies among the enemies of England who would give him aid. The French, Scots, and others were looking to unbalance the English, and Owain offered them a chance to do it through supporting an independent Wales. By 1404, through many successful sieges and decisive military victories on the battlefield, Owain Glyndŵr and the Welsh warriors once again managed to wrest control from the Saxons and restore Welsh rule. In a ceremony attended by official delegations from France, Scotland, and the Kingdom of Leon, Spain, he was officially crowned Prince of Wales. He announced an ambitious plan for an independent Wales based on traditional Welsh law, an independent Welsh church, and the building of national universities. He moved quickly to build an alliance with France, and some French troops were deployed to Wales to aid Glyndŵr. But Glyndŵr also made allies with the Saxons. He forged a bold agreement with Edmund Mortimer and Henry Percy, significant English nobles, which planned for the tripartite division of England and Wales between them. Welsh lands would have been extended far beyond their present boundaries, including regions long under English domination, but which were probably still largely Welsh-speaking at that time. Unfortunately, the war began to turn against the Welsh. The English launched an attack against them from occupied Ireland and won control over Anglesey in 1406. By 1407, the vastly superior numbers and resources of the English were proving too hard to match, and Owain began to lose his English allies. The French were less interested in keeping up military support, as they were considering making peace with the English, and an English economic blockade of Wales was making it difficult to acquire arms. By 1409, Owain Glyndŵr was besieged in Harlech Castle. He managed to sneak out, disguised as an old man, and escaped into the wilderness with a band of loyal supporters. He continued to fight a guerrilla war, launching daring raids upon the English. By 1413, Henry offered pardons to all the Welsh, including Glyndŵr, but the Prince of Wales ignored the offer, despite nearly all of Wales having already fallen back under English control by this time. In 1415, Owain disappeared from history. While one of his associates, Adam of Usk, said that he died of natural causes, some legends say that, like Arthur before him, he sleeps in a hidden cave somewhere in the mountains, and one day, when the Cymry are most in need and looking for deliverance, he will rise again. In the Laws of Wales Acts of 1535 to 1542, Wales was incorporated into the Kingdom of England. Yet the Cymry, their language, their sense of identity, live on today. In many ways, the Welsh identity has given rise to aspects of the medieval and modern English one, in that both see King Arthur as a foundational figure, despite him being based on kings who fought against the Anglo-Saxons. After Julius Caesar, after Hengist and Horsa, William and Edward and Henry, and all the rest, they are still here. Yet the need for the return of Arthur is greater than ever. I will be watching for him. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Cymru yn byth.
Greetings, motherfactors. My name is Chris, and today it's time to talk. Wait, no, I'm being told I got it wrong. Right, let's start that again. We're talking about the beautiful country that is tucked snugly between England and Ireland, Wales. But just how old is Wales? What are Glamorgan sausages, and why do I want all of them forever? And do you think I'll be able to say any of the Welsh words right? Spoiler alert, nope. 2 out of these 3 questions are going to be answered, so sit down, don't forget to like and subscribe as we traverse the expansive rolling hills with some mouthwash in 101 facts about Wales. Number 1. The word Wales comes from the Proto-Germanic word Walke. In 500 BC, Germanic tribes met with Celtic natives and began calling them as such. Over time, Walke would begin to be pronounced Walha. Number 2. The word Walha was used by the Anglo-Saxons to denote people that they thought were worthy of enslavement. Eventually, after some upheaval, we'll go into it later, the word Welsh, meaning foreign, was used. Number 3. Wales has 2 official languages, English and Welsh. 99% of the population speak English and 29.3% speak Welsh. In most places, English is the dominant first language, but in the north and west of the country, the dominant first language is Welsh. Number 4. The word Welsh also comes from way in the past, in the 5th century specifically. Anglo-Saxon invaders wrote about the Welsh and the fact that they fled from the English like fire. Number 5. Alright, geography. Wales has a total area of 20,779 kilometers squared, 2,700 kilometers of coastline, and comprises of 8.35% of the land of the United Kingdom. The land is attached to England by its eastern border. To the north is the Irish Sea, to the west is the Cardigan Bay, and to the south is the Bristol Channel. Number 6. As of a 2014 census, just over 3 million people live in the Big W. A third of these people live in the Cardiff-Newport metropolitan area. I'm trying to picture that many people, but I really can't. Wonder how many tins of baked beans you need to feed them all. Number 7. Speaking of Cardiff, did you know that Cardiff is the capital of the country? That's not the whole fact though. The word Cardiff derives from the words Cer, the Welsh for fort, and Diff, a form of the word Taff, which is the name of the river that flows by the castle. Number 8. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of Wales? Castles? Well, it kind of makes sense, since the country is believed to have more castles per square mile than anywhere else in the world. Number 9. Also, you'd probably think of one of the coolest flags in the world, a red dragon standing out against white and green horizontal stripes on the background. That's all they need. I mean, it matters a little that Wales is the only country in the UK not represented on the Union flag, but they have a dragon, so that's something. Number 10. So as well as having a lot of castles, the country homes a place with one of the longest names in the world. Here it is on screen because there's no way I'm going to say that, but I can tell you that thankfully it's been shortened to Llanfairpwll or Langfair. It's still pretty hard though. Number 11. I mean, it's Welsh, famously unique and baffling to the outsiders. For example, the Welsh alphabet has no K, Q, V, or Z, yet the 4,000-year-old language is no less efficient. Some English words such as car, gull, and penguin even have Welsh roots. Number 12. Anyways, the place is located in North Wales and the name translates to the Church of St Mary in the hollow of white hazel trees near the rapid whirlpool by St Tysilio's of the Red Cave. Fair enough, the town is quite old. There have been signs of human settlements way before Roman times. Sounds like a clever solution to remember a place where there are no GPS or maps available. Number 13. And what would Wales be without folk songs? The country is often referred to as the Land of Song, as it is known for its harpists, choirs, and solo artists. Number 14. The label comes straight from the 18th century when many British emigrated to Wales, seeking work in the expanding coal and iron industries. There, they rediscovered the Methodist movement of the Anglican Church, thanks to leading Welsh preachers of the time who united the new communities and made singing even more prominent. Number 15. Nonetheless, Wales has two other national emblems, the daffodil and the leek. Originally, it was just a leek. According to an old legend back in the 7th century, St. David advised the population to wear leeks on their hats to indicate whose side of the battle they were on against invading Saxons. Number 16. Now, the daffodils come into play ages later, sort of. We need to bring back Welsh once again. You see, the term daffodil in Welsh translates to this word, leek is this word, which literally means Peter's leek. Eventually, it was kind of inevitable. People forgot to attribute the leek to Peter, leaving just this word, the daffodil. Number 17. Let's not forget the sheep. Wales is famous for having more sheep than people. In fact, it's been estimated that there are roughly 10 million sheep for only 3.1 million people. One of the most famous breeds is probably the badger-faced mountain sheep. They have super adorable striped faces, like a badger.
Okay.
Number 18. But there are so many facts still to cover. For example, do you know when exactly Wales came into existence? I know it's definitely a hard question. Even experts can't agree on a specific date, which kind of makes sense considering the area has been inhabited since 250,000 BC. Number 19. However, from a geopolitical perspective, Wales as a country officially formed in 1536 with the Act of Union of Henry VIII. Before the King's Act, the territories of the country were mainly a loose collection of independent kingdoms and lordships. Number 20. The land experienced incursions and consequently influxes throughout the Roman era. South Wales in particular was filled with Mediterranean culture. The towns of Caerwent and Carmarthen still host villas and a number of archaeological sites.
Number 21.
More in general, there are remains of Roman roads and forts across the country. They mostly date back to the military occupation of the areas that lasted from the 3rd to the early 5th century. I don't know about you, but maybe I should get my flatmate to read all the Welsh words. He is Welsh. Though civil influences and customs extended at least till the early 6th century, they reflect in the native language of the territories known as Brythonic. Linguistic studies have suggested the language was infused with Latin terms. Number 23. Of course, Latin influences can also be linked to religion. With the establishment of the Romano-British Christian Church in southeastern Wales in the Roman period, Latin, which was the official language of the church, penetrated deeper into the local population. Number 24. Inscriptions and Christian symbols belonging to the 5th and 6th centuries were discovered in the region. They show Latin terms like sacerdos, meaning bishops, and presbyter, meaning priest. Number 25. Further proof can also be found in the development of the Celtic Church. It resembled the Christian Church's monastic character with a major church class headed by an abbot and bishop. Number 26. But enough talk about religion, let's talk about people. The people of Wales who, as mentioned before, weren't easy to bring together. Many tried from as early as the 8th century with King Offa of Mercia. Number 27. Rhodri Mawr, known as the Great, not only fought back Vikings successfully, but he also brought together the territories within Powys and the southwest regions of Ceredigion and Ystrad Tuy. Number 28. Guys, I'm really trying. Before his death in 878, Rhodri worked on developing the kingdoms of Wale, Dyfed, Brycheiniog, Glywysing, and Gwent. His son Anarod went even further by formally subjecting the Welsh kingdom to the English sovereign. Number 29. In 916, Heward ap Cadell took command and secured Dyfed by marriage, creating the kingdom of Deheubarth. I'm so sorry. He completed his dad and grandpa's deeds by eventually bringing Gwynedd and Powys under his rule. Number 30. Too bad that, despite all his victories, future plans went up in smoke. Not everyone was happy with Hywel's thirst for power, and a great alliance was formed to withstand the Anglo-Saxon suzerain by the end of the 10th century. Number 31. Things got even worse with the death of King Maredudd ap Owain in 999. A period of prolonged internal clashes began. Every time someone tried to establish a dynasty, he was challenged by others who believed to be a better fit to rule over the kingdoms. Number 32. It was under these peaceful circumstances that the Norman invasions began. Can't tell you how things turned into total chaos then. Actually, that's exactly what I'm here for. So, at the time, the kingdoms used to be divided into cantrefs, directly under royal administration. Number 33. The cantrefs were, in turn, divided into groups of manors, where the majority of the population resided. These were the areas most difficult to control, as, comprehensibly, they enjoyed their freedom. Number 34. By the 12th century, the Welsh society had already replaced the manor system into a smaller Unit 1 consisting in trefs or townships. These were administrated by the Camote, which had replaced the royal cantrefs. This administration remained, more or less, in place throughout the medieval period. Number 35. But back to the Normans. Once they'd conquered England, they established upon the Welsh border of the three earldoms of Chester, Shrewsbury, and Hereford. From there, they advanced into southern Wales. In some cases, like Gwynedd and Powys, they even managed to assert Norman lordship over numerous cantrefs and Camotes. Number 36. Similarly, when in 1093, Normans furtherly advanced, and they also established major lordships of Cardigan, Pembroke, Brecon, and Glamorgan. This also led to the creation of the March of Wales, in which Norman lords and their successors exercised, under the custom of the March, extensive powers and a large measure of autonomy from the King of England. Number 37. Conflicts and instability continued in northern Wales until the formation of the kingdoms of Gwynedd and Powys, which reconstituted as major political entities. This brought stability throughout the 12th century, in which three Welsh kingdoms of Gwynedd, Powys, and Deheubarth prevailed over the Norman-influenced Marchia Wally. Number 38. In the 13th century, Edward I tried to reconquer the territories and unify everyone under the English crown, a daring project that turned out to be quite difficult to achieve. He encountered fierce opposition and several revolts. Number 39. The same problem persisted during the reign of Edward II throughout the majority of the 14th century. At the end of the century then, with the deposition of Richard II, who had been influential to Welshmen among his partisans, a great rebellion among the entire Welsh community arose. Number 40. Following the rebellion, Henry VII secured all the communities in northern Wales by negotiation and payment, but as we mentioned, it was Henry VIII who unified the country in the 16th century.
Number 41.
With unification, a period of social change started. During the 16th and 17th century, gentry estates were enlarged and consolidated, and the population grew. However, inflation created intense problems that were hardly eased by the enclosure of waste areas and the cultivation of marginal lands.
The meaning of life.
Plus, most landowners were often forced to divide their holdings and convert summer dwellings, used by shepherds in summer months, into permanent homesteads. Many were forced off their land altogether, and it wasn't until the late 18th century that industry offered the rural population something to live with. Number 43. The 18th century was also a great century for Methodism. Welsh people found their Anglican churches racked by poverty and inadequate leadership. That's how Methodism became a big deal for them, who established churches at their expense. Number 44. Industrial growth continued in Wales in the 19th century, with considerable development in the coalfield of northeastern Wales and the establishment of an important metallurgical centre in the southwest. Number 45. Biggest industrial expansion happened in South Wales, with the growth of substantial ironworks. The area became densely populated and experienced heavy immigration from other areas. Number 46. A similar wave of industrial and immigration growth happened with the outbreak of World War I. A massive flow of workers moved into the steel and coal areas, largely from outside Wales. This affected the composition of the industrial communities, both culturally and politically. Number 47. Speaking of which, by 1922 the Labour Party got its hold upon the industrial communities. Similarly, in the northeast and in the slate quarry communities of northwestern Wales, an allegiance to radical liberalism eventually evolved into adherence to Labour. Number 48. In 1962, the Welsh Language Society was founded, aimed to preserve the language, bringing a positive response to the problem of its continuing decline. The society also contributed to the Welsh Language Act of 1967. Number 49. The support of the protection of the Welsh identity and heritage increased in the following years, and, in 1982, they created a Welsh language television channel. In 1993, the government passed another Welsh Language Act. Number 50. This act established the Welsh Language Board, which promoted the use of the Welsh language and sought to give Welsh equal legal weight with English in the conduct of government business. Number 51. The origins of the national red dragon flag are quite interesting. It traces back to the Roman invasion period. At the time, the Roman military cohorts used the symbol of the dragon. Welsh people liked it so much that when the Romans left, they kept the red dragon as a key emblem of Wales. Number 52. Remember earlier I said that the Welsh language is as old as 4,000 years? Well, that makes it the oldest language in Britain. The English language, despite now being the more popular spoken language of Wales and the rest of the UK, didn't originate until around the 5th century AD, making Welsh more than 2 millennia older. Number 53. Caerphilly Castle is the largest castle in Wales and, even more impressively, the second largest castle in the entirety of Europe, coming second to Windsor Castle, which makes sense as it's where the Queen lives. No shame in coming second to that. Number 54. Apparently Wales is famous for giving the gifts of love spoons. They're wooden spoons that are carved with various decorations and were given as a romantic gesture. Nowadays they're for special occasions like births, christenings, weddings and anniversaries, to name a few. Number 55. One of the oldest love spoons is from Wales and can be found at St Fagans National History Museum near Cardiff. It dates back to 1667, however the tradition of love spoons is thought to be much older. Number 56. Speaking of weddings, Welsh gold has always been used to create wedding rings for none other than the royal family. This tradition started in 1923 by King George VI to the Queen Mother, and has continued as recently as the rings of Harry and Meghan Markle in 2018. Number 57. Welsh gold comes from the Clogau St David's mine, and is stamped with a little dragon to identify its authenticity. Clogau jewellery is some of the most rare and exclusive in the world. Number 58. Here's the fact you probably didn't expect. Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world, was named after a Welsh guy. Yep, Sir George Everest surveyed and mapped out the mountain, which took a staggering 35 years between 1806 and 1841. The Royal Geographic Society then named the mountain after him. Number 59. Wales is home to the world's first ever suspension bridge. Alright, it's probably not as exciting as I'm making out, but when the Menai Bridge was built in 1826, it was an engineering marvel. Not only that, but when it opened, it was also the longest bridge in the world at 386 meters long.
Number 60.
Much like the other British countries, Wales has a patron saint. It's St David, who was a Welsh bishop from the 6th century. Wales celebrates St David's Day on March 1st, and there are often parades, small festivals and events across the country to celebrate. Number 61. The national anthem of Wales is called This. I'm sorry, I did try. Which in English means Land of My Fathers. It's sung in Welsh, obviously. Alright, next fact. Number 62. The title of Prince of Wales, currently taken by Prince Charles, has been a title bestowed on the eldest son of the British monarchy. The title isn't automatically given, however it has been given to every British heir since the 1300s. Number 63. Interestingly, Queen Elizabeth II was never given the title of Princess of Wales, because it was previously only given to firstborn sons. Since the rules changed in 2015, allowing for more gender equality in the monarchy, the title of Princess of Wales may be given in the future. All princesses of Wales so far have been wives of the incumbent prince. A Nintendo 64. The national sport of Wales is rugby. Not a huge surprise, if you've ever been to Wales, they're rugby mad. Wales were part of the first ever international rugby game, playing against England in 1881. They've been fierce rivals ever since. Number 65. The home of Welsh rugby is the Principality Stadium in Cardiff. It's absolutely massive, but its claim to fame, aside from being the home of Welsh rugby, is that it has the largest ever retractable roof in the world. So no matter what the weather, the roof has got you covered. Or not covered if the sun is out. Anyway. Number 66. If you think of the first ever flying machine, you no doubt think of the Wright brothers in America. Well, Welshman Bill Frost may well have beaten them to the skies by 7 years after he flew his aircraft a reported 500 yards before crashing into some bushes, according to locals who attended. Number 67. So why are the Wright brothers credited with one of the biggest achievements instead of Frost? Well, no independent witnesses were there, nor were any photos taken of the event in 1896, meaning it couldn't be verified. Frost couldn't afford to give it another go and didn't have the money to keep the rights to his patent, and lost it 4 years later, paving the way for the Wrights to cement their place in the history books. Number 68. Similarly, you might associate Jack Daniel's whiskey with Tennessee in America, and why wouldn't you? It's on the label after all. But in 2012, a Welshman named Mark Evans was researching his ancestry and discovered a recipe book written by his great-great-grandmother, local herbalist Lucinda Daniel. See where this is going?
Number 69.
There's planes and cars and everything just out of my window. This dusty old book contained the original recipe for Jack Daniel's whiskey, which Lucinda's son Jack was said to have taken to America when he emigrated in the 19th century. So old Jack Daniel and his recipe for one of the most popular whiskies in the world could well be from Wales, although this story is disputed by some, including the master distiller at Jack Daniel's. Number 70. You've probably never wondered who came up with the equal sign, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Robert Record, a Welsh physician and mathematician from the 16th century, was the man who invented the equal symbol as we know it today, and introduced the confusing pre-existing version which is the same as the addition symbol to English speakers before he made the less confusing version. Either way, he's an important math man. Number 71. Wales was also the setting of the first ever wireless radio message transmission in 1897. Googly Elmo Marconi made history when he transmitted the first radio signal across the open. Number 72. This enormous achievement took place on a cliff at Lavernock Point and sent its message across the sea to Flat Home, a small island approximately 4 miles away. Marconi sent a Morse code message saying, "Can you hear me?" and seconds later received a reply of "Yes, loud and clear," making communications history. These Morse code recording slips are now kept in the National Museum of Wales. Number 73. Have you heard of Welsh cakes? They're a sweetbread kind of delicacy and include sultanas and currants, kind of like a flatter, flakier scone. Well, as the name suggests, they originated in Wales and they've been popular since the 19th century. Number 74. Obviously, Wales is also home to the largest Welsh cake ever made because of course it is. It was baked in March 2020 by Tan Ye Castell Bakery and weighed 28 kilograms and had a diameter of 6 foot. Number 75. Wales is also famous for the Glamorgan sausage, named after the county of Glamorgan in Wales. The vegetarian sausage is made of cheese, usually Caerphilly cheese, as well as leeks and breadcrumbs. They sound delicious and I want 50 of them right now, please and thank you. Number 76. The sausages were traditionally made with Glamorgan cheese, but after the Glamorgan cattle that produce it almost went extinct, they swapped it for Caerphilly cheese. They became particularly popular during the Second World War, when meat was rationed and much less available. Number 77. Cawl is another traditional Welsh dish. It's basically a hearty Welsh stew, and is usually made of lamb or beef with leeks, potatoes, swede, carrots, and other seasonal delicious veggies. Cawl is widely recognised as the official national dish of Wales. Number 78. There are 5 areas of outstanding natural beauty in Wales. These are the Isle of Anglesey, Llwydian Range, Llyn Peninsula, Gower Peninsula, and Wye Valley. These places are protected to preserve their naturally beautiful countrysides and wildlife. Number 79. There are also 3 national parks in Wales. These are the Pembrokeshire Coast National Park, Snowdonia National Park, and Brecon Beacons National Park. These 3 parks together cover an entire fifth of the total country. Number 80. Earlier I told you Cardiff is the capital of Wales. No worry, that's still the case, but it wasn't always Cardiff. In fact, before 1955, Wales didn't even have a capital city. Since they've had one though, it has always been Cardiff. It was a close call though, as many people thought it should be Caernarfon. Number 81. British citizens also have Wales to thank for the NHS. The health service was created by Welshman Aneurin Bevan, a Labour MP for Ebbw Vale from 1929 to 1960. He was inspired by the Tredegar Medical Aid Society in his hometown, and used these principles to create the NHS, nationalising free healthcare for Britain. Number 82. Wales is home to the oldest record store in the world. Spiller's Records opened in 1894 in Cardiff, and when they opened, specialised in selling phonographs and their wax cylinders. Nowadays they sell vinyl records, CDs, and host live music gigs and events at their hometown in Morgan Arcade. Number 83. Wales is also home to the longest zip line in Europe and the fastest in the world. It takes you 1.5 kilometers over the stunning Penrhyn Quarry Lake, and can travel speeds up to 100 miles per hour. Though if you want to be taking in the Welsh landscape, you might want to try and slow down. Number 84. We've all heard tales of the infamous pirate Jolly Roger and the flag named after him, but did you know that he was a real man and he was Welsh? Pembrokeshire-born Bartholomew Roberts was considered one of the most successful pirates during the golden age of piracy in the 16th century, earning his nickname and place in history. Number 85. The rum captain Morgan is named after Welsh pirate Sir Henry Morgan, who was born in Llanrumney in 1653, before sailing to the Caribbean and becoming another one of the most iconic privateers in history. He remained on his plantation in Jamaica as the Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica until his death in 1688. Number 86. Wales has a national bird, and unlike their national animal, the dragon, this one actually exists. After a public poll in the 1990s, the red kite was voted as Wales' favourite bird, and their national bird. Number 87. Wales is also home to a number of amazing animals, including puffins and bottlenose dolphins. Ramsay Island in Wales is also one of the best places to find the Atlantic grey seal. Number 88. The Welsh islands of Scomer and Stockholm near Pembrokeshire are home to the largest colony of Manx shearwaters. They kind of look like a black seagull, and there are around 350,000 of them nesting on the island. Number 89. On a slightly more depressing note, the world's largest turtle was found washed up on the shores of North Wales, having sadly died. The leatherback turtle was more than 2 meters long, weighed a whopping 900 kilograms, and was probably about 100 years old. Turtles often visit Welsh waters in the summer to eat the jellyfish. Number 90. Fans of Harry Potter might recognise Freshwater West Beach in Pembrokeshire, Wales. This seaside location was used as the setting for Shell Cottage in the Deathly Hallows movie, where, spoiler alert, Dobby dies. The house may have gone with the film crews, but fans keep Dobby's gravesite pristine. Number 91. Another really cool movie location in Wales is Brecon Beacons. Henhead Falls in the Brecon Beacons National Park was used as the cover for Christian Bale's Batcave in Christopher Nolan's Batman movie The Dark Knight in 2009. Number 92. The Ministry of Defense Army training site in Caerwent was also the location used for Captain America: The First Avenger in 2011, starring Chris Evans. They used the site for a lot of the war scenes, and cast members like Samuel L. Jackson and Tommy Lee Jones spent their downtime attending Ryder Cup golf games taking place nearby. Number 93. BBC hits Doctor Who and its spin-off Torchwood have also filmed many scenes in Wales, with the latter being set in Cardiff. Number 94. Of course we can't mention filming in Wales and not talk about one of the most popular shows ever to have been filmed there, Gavin and Stacey, aka the launchpad for James Corden's career. Set between Billericay in Essex, England and Barry Island in Wales, a lot of scenes were filmed around the Vale of Glamorgan and Whitmore Bay. There are lots of locations to visit if you're a fan. Number 95. In addition to being rugby mad, the Welsh also have their own football league. We're talking British football or soccer, not the American football here. The Welsh Premier League have existed since 1992, though 5 teams still play in the English leagues. These are Cardiff City, Swansea City, Newport County, Wrexham and Merthyr Town. Number 96. A number of famous sports people hail from Wales, including footballers Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey, double gold medalist in Taekwondo Jade Jones, gold medalist boxer Lauren Price, and many more. Number 97. Alright, let's talk famous Welsh people, and hold on because there's loads, and spoiler alert, there are a lot of Joneses. Famous Welsh musicians include Sir Tom Jones, Charlotte Church, Dame Shirley Bassey, Bonnie Tyler Catherine Jenkins, Aled Jones, And the bands The Stereophonics, The Manic Street Preachers, and many others. Like, enough to fill a whole other 101 Facts. Number 98. They've not just got good lungs though, they've also got good actors. Wales is home to Catherine Zeta-Jones, Ruth Jones, Terry Jones, Michael Sheen, Timothy Dalton, Richard Burton, Sir Jonathan Pryce, Sir Anthony Hopkins, Luke Evans, Taron Egerton, Ewan Rayon, Tom Ellis, Pam Ferris, Rhys Ifans, and honestly so many more. But let's end this list with the legend that is Rob Brydon. Number 99. Wales also boasts some fancy pants designers. Laura Ashley, yes, the same as the stores, was a Welsh fashion designer. Julia MacDonald, also Welsh, and David Emmanuel, who has outfitted Madonna, Elizabeth Taylor, and was the designer of Princess Diana's wedding dress. You guessed it, also Welsh. It's 100. It's number 100. Roald Dahl, aka one of the most famous children authors in the world, bringing us Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the BFG, Fantastic Mr. Fox, The Witches, James and the Giant Peach, and the incredible Matilda. Yeah, he was also from Wales, born in Cardiff in 1916 to Norwegian parents. 101. We can also thank Wales for a few inventions. Edwin Stevens invented the world's first wearable electronic hearing aid. William Jones came up with a symbol for pi. David Thomas invented iron smelting, which changed the metal industry. Sir William Grove invented the fuel cell and the concept for the light bulb. Sir Price Jones invented mail order shopping, like a wonderful human being. Isaac Roberts took the first proper picture of the Andromeda Galaxy. Edward Bowen was a key figure in the development of radar. And finally, Adam Powell invented Neopets, the most important invention of all. So that was 101 facts about Wales. Did you learn many things? Did you learn any things? Let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, while you're down there, why don't give us a like and subscribe? Because subscribing will give you joy, and liking will give you more joy. How much joy? Why don't you like it?
It was around 10,000 years BC that man first settled in the Test Valley. Now I'm fishing here in the heart of a borough with over 100,000 inhabitants, just a few miles from towns like Rumsey and Andover, with their housing estates and factories making everything from carpets to computers. Yet, I can still come here with my rod and enjoy a scene which seems as old as England. Over 300 years ago, Isaac Walton could have been thinking of this very scene when he wrote in the Angler song, "Fresh rivers best my mind do please, whose sweet calm course I contemplate and seek in life to imitate." And that's a sentence which still holds true today in the late 1980s. After all, if the only thing in fishing was catching fish, we'd never do it. The Test is probably the most famous trout river in the world. It runs
Mm-hmm. Okay, love. Protect. For Riv Taff. Riv Taff. Mm-hmm. Trout fishing. Trout. Yeah. Bro.
I am the fire of the eyelid of the mighty waterfall, the good god of druidism of the Tuatha De Danann, the mighty one of great knowledge, and horseman great father are my 3 names. Few gods of the Gaels are as well known as the Dagda. In the medieval tales he is both exalted as a great king, father, and druid, and the object of mockery. He is said to have been the king in the beginning, yet presented as a later lord, whose rule goes unexplained. He is known by many names, and is the father of many important gods, but his nature is mysterious, hidden beneath the 7 cowls that obscure his face. What is the true nature of this great father, husband of the frightening Morrigan, a druid, a trickster, a liar, a digger of the earth, and the distributor of the mounds? Who is the Dagda? Hi friends, I'm Kevin McLean. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and consider supporting my work through Patreon or PayPal. Much thanks to all of my supporters. In the intoxication of the Ulsterman, Curoi MacDaire is provided the most detailed description of the god in any surviving sources. I saw a large-eyed, large-thighed, noble, great, immensely tall man with a splendid grey cloak about him, with 7 short, black, equally smooth cowls around him. Shorter was each upper one, longer each lower. At either side of him were 9 men. In his hand was a dreadful iron staff, on which was a furious end and a smooth end. His play and amusement consisted in laying the furious end on the heads of the 9, whom he would kill in the space of a moment. He would then lay the smooth end on them, so that he would reanimate them in the same time. Many guises has the one described, said Curoi. Who is that then? Asked Alil. Not hard to tell, said Curoi. The great Dagda, son of Ethiel, the good god of the Tuatha De Danann. To magnify valor in conflict, he wrought confusion upon the host in the morning this day, and no one in the host sees him. It should be obvious from the description that he is not the Gaelic Thor, as he is sometimes wrongly depicted. He is a complex figure that can only be understood when examining in detail his various associations within the overall Indo-European worldview. He is a god with many names, though he is most commonly known as the Dagda, or Daga in modern Gaelic pronunciation. Medieval commentators generally believed it meant the good god, which is often accepted by modern scholars as well. Good isn't intended to have a moral connotation here, but is used in terms of ability. When the god Nuada asks the Dagda, what tasks he will perform in the great battle, and he replied that, "The power which ye boast, I shall wield it all myself." "It is you who are the Dagda," said everyone. Wherefore, thenceforward the name Dagda adhered to him. In other words, since he vows to be able to wield all of the skills previously mentioned, he is called the Good God, because he is greatly skilled at everything. He makes this comment after Mathgen the sorcerer said he would cast the mountains of Ireland upon the Fomorians and roll their summits against the ground. The cupbearers vowed to remove all the water from the rivers of Ireland, to make the Fomorians die of thirst. And Feargal the Druid said he would cast fire on the faces of the Fomorians, robbing them of their senses and strength, and bind their urine. But he would increase the bravery and strength of the men of Ireland. The Dagda claims the ability to wield all of the powers that the sorcerers and druids profess, and it is with these arts that he is most often connected. The tale of the Dagda is a confused one, obscured by Christianization of original tales. In the typical story presented in the book The Taking of Ireland, we are told that he is one of 3 central kings of the Tuatha De Danann. Nuada holds the sword of Findius, Lug the spear of Gorius, and the Dagda the cauldron from Murius. He accompanied Nuada when he led the Tuatha De Danann to Ireland in the dark clouds, and fought against the Firbolg. Then he aided Lug in the second battle of Mugturid against the Fomorians, and finally he served as king when Lug was overthrown by the sons of Kermit. However, this structure is likely not the original one, or at least not the only one. As the Great Father and the Father of Existence, as he refers to himself as in the second battle of Mugturid, he may have been the first king. No definite myth survives about his rule, but he is always thought to be Lord of the Shida, or Shi in modern pronunciation, the fairy mounds and burial mounds of ancient kings. He is said to have been killed by a poisoned dart of Kethlin, wife of Balor. His grave site is the Brug na Bonya, the most famous burial site of kings, who were believed to enjoy a bright afterlife in his abode, filled with endless food and drink. In one tale, his home is at Ushnach, from where he could look out over all of Ireland. One of the most used names for the Dagda is Echith Ol Ather, or Echi Ol Aher in modern pronunciation, meaning Horseman Greatfather. The title Ol Ather is directly cognate with the name given to the Norse god Odin, Allfather. This cannot be a coincidence, and a number of aspects of Norse Odin have a common origin with the Dagda. Often he is simply referred to as Echith, and many later legendary kings named Echith may be named after him, and are occasionally associated with similar mythical themes. The name is derived from the word for horse, and it is likely that in an earlier period he was not the Great Horseman, but the Great Horse. The third common name of the Dagda is Ruad Ro Essa, the Mighty One of Great Knowledge, sometimes translated as Red One of Great Knowledge. It is explained in the Book of Leinster that Ergna, meaning understanding, is a son of Ecni, wisdom, who is the son of the 3 gods of art, who are the sons of Brigid, who is a lore master, who is the daughter of the Dagda, who is the mighty one of great knowledge. It explains that the Dagda is the son of all of the arts, Mac na Nullan Dana, and that he was the youth who had every art. Knowledge and poetry are consistently linked to him. He is sometimes called Dagda of the Songs. When historical figures are compared to him in praise poetry, it is in the context of them being extremely knowledgeable or master poets. Saint Cormac, who is both a king and a noted scholar, who composed Cormac's glossary, is given such praise in the Book of Leinster. Cormac the wonderful sage, after the form of the Dagda I declare, son of Culennin, a clear song, with great beautiful chanting. His children are likewise connected to these themes. Brigid, or Brige, his daughter, is called the goddess of the Fili. His son, Angus MacOg, or Anus, is connected to prophecy and knowledge. A third son, Kermit, is sometimes called Honey-Mouthed, or the Harper. Under the name Fair Ben, the Dagda is also called the father of Rigberth, meaning King Bard, which may in fact be another name for Kermit. Aed, or in modern Gaelic pronunciation, Ug, simply means fire, and is cognate with the Latin word for temple, derived from the altar fire. The Dagda is not only a master of music and poetry, but connected to its origin. In the Tanbo Freach it is said, "The illustrious triad are three brothers, namely Sorrow Strain, Joy Strain, and Sleep Strain. Bowen from the Shide is the mother of the triad. It is from the music which Uathna, the Dagda's harper, played that the three are named." The Dinshenahas of Alach says, "Who is the king over all Erin, sweet-sounding, radiant? Who but the skillful Dagda?" He is also the god of druidry, or magic. In the Battle of Mugturid, he proclaims that, "I will take the side of the men of Ireland, with noble slaughter and complete destruction and witchcraft." In the typically available translation, this last word appears instead as sorcery, but in Gaelic, amidhichti refers specifically to witchcraft, from amith, meaning a witch, hag, or other female magical figure. He possesses all magic, even that which is generally relegated to women, akin to Odin's practice of seidr. The word for complete destruction here, ad milid, can also be translated as blight, hindering, derangement, casting the evil eye, or other harmful magical effects, and it is this meaning which may be intended. When he is described to Curoi going about the troops, he is spreading confusion, increasing the desire to fight, something also connected to his wife, the Morrigan. When his son Kermit declares that he has all the magical powers of his father, he declares that he will turn the blades and points of Lug's weapons and render them useless. In the taking of the Shire, it says of him, "There was a wondrous king over the Tuatha Dé in Ireland, Dagon by name, the Dagda. Great was his power, even over the sons of Mil, after they had seized the land. For the Tuatha Dé damaged the grain and the milk of the sons of Mil, until they made a treaty with the Dagda. Thereafter, they preserved their grains and their milk for them." Dagon may mean something like greatly good, but it may also refer to the Semitic god mentioned in the Bible, Dagon, which appears in Old Gaelic texts. How much they knew of the nature of Dagon beyond what is said of him in the Bible is hard to say, but he is a fertility god. If they knew it or not, it does align with many powers ascribed to the Dagda. Of the fort of Alach it is said, "Alach, the hill where the Dagda slept. Red are its flowers, many its houses, few its plunderings, plumb its stones." Though there were many gods and many different tribal names for them, the early Gaelic pantheon seems to have revolved around three chief deities, Nuada, Lug, and the Dagda, not always by these names. They are associated with different aspects of nature, the mind, and social roles. All three of them are inevitably involved in weather and seasonal change in their own ways. Nuada was said to bring the gods to Ireland in clouds that covered the sun, and he is linked to water. Lugh summons the fierce powers of floods, winds, lightning, and light of the sun and moon. The Dagda, however, was believed to rule over the seasons or weather in relation to produce, profit, and crops. In the Wooing of Edain it says, "His other name was the Dagda, for it was he who used to do the miracles and ruled the seasons and the produce for them." This aspect is also emphasized in the Sheatha mounds that he ascribes to himself. Sheath lethet lachtmaige, the Sheatha of the wide milk fields. Oi asith, the sheep growing. Sheath banya, the white sheath, perhaps referring to banya as in milk. It is also one of the key associations of his daughter Bridget, who manages domesticated animals and ensures the bounty in the household. Of the Brug na Boine it is said, "Behold the fairy mound before your eyes. It is plain for you to see it is a kingly dwelling. It was built by the harsh Dagda. It was a shelter, it was a keep renowned for strength. Entertainment was made by him for the king. In the mound by means of lasting deception. Thence is named, it is not a question without a key. Mound of refuse, before the eyes of the hosts." The idea that the Dagda made the mound, which is also called the Mound of Refuse, links it to the idea which Cuchulainn states in the Wooing of Ever, when it says that after Lugh's victory, the Tuatha Dé put on a giant feast for him, and that the hill at Taltu was the refuse from that feast. This appears to be the same type of myth applied to a different site. The Dagda is presented as being a cook for High King Conora, consistently connecting the Dagda with food. The connection between the Dagda and crops may be related to control over the seasons. In the Battle of Mug Turid, when he and his brothers Ogma and Lugh come to the camp of the Fomorians to retrieve his stolen harp, he calls out, "Come Daur de Bla, come Cor Ketharhar, come summer, come winter, mouths of harps and bags and pipes." The exact translation of the first name, Daur de Bla, is not certain, but it may be from Daur da Bla, meaning oak of two shouts, plains, or borders, or it may be from Daurd Abla, meaning murmuring apple. The second name, Cor Ketharchar, means the four-angled harp, but more strictly, the harmonized four angles. It is shown here related to the ordering of the seasons, as well as the origin of all music, the cosmic harmony, which is represented by the harmonious flowing of time, which the Fomorians disrupted, and which must be taken back from them for order to be restored. Lugh overcomes the Fomorian army through military force, and the Dagda restores harmony through the retrieval of his harp. This association with seasons and produce may be similar to Greek Kronos and Roman Saturn, both progenitor gods linked to seasons and crops. A Dinshenchas tale about Mag Merthemna describes how the Dagda drove water from the land, along with an octopus. Some say this shows that he was a thunder god, as he battles a sea monster akin to Thor. But the context of this battle is different. The battle is purely a magical chant, and the focus is on removing the waters from the land, contrary to the nature of a storm god, it would seem. In the tale of the birth of his son Angus, he makes 9 months appear like one day. Bridget, adopted as a Christian saint, but originally a daughter of the Dagda, is connected to fire and sun. St. Brocan's hymn to her says, "A day of reaping for her, it was well reaped. No fault."
Bastard, you're looking fucking bollocks.
She is a belter, different from the rest. Diamonds on her finger and she always looks her best. She is a gangster with 100 mile stare. When she walks, her feet don't touch a floor. She is a belter. She plays with lightning, hammer 100 miles high, dishing out the thunder like a god inside the sky. She is a dancer, and she dances in my dreams. Reminds me that the world is not as evil as it seems. She is a belter. No happy endings, unless fairy tales come true. But she looks like a princess and there's not much else to do. I think I love her. She gets underneath my skin, but I've been stung a few times, so I don't let no one I know even belt her. She is a belter. She is a belter. She is a belter. How can she reach me when I'm high above the shelf? Lost inside the smoke ring while I ponder to myself. Is she the answer to the question in my mind? Is happiness an option or is love just turned me blind? Is she a belter? No happy endings, unless fairy tales come true. But she looks like a princess and there's not much else to do. I think I love her. She gets underneath my skin, but I've been stung a few times, so I don't let no one in, no even belter. She is a belter. She is a belter. She is a belter.
Boom, 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 boom.
We love to boogie. We love to boogie. Jitterbug boogie. Bowling Billy boogie. We love to boogie on a Saturday night. Linda May Finner's got a Cadillac bone. Jamie lost a cherry walking all the way home. The passion of the earth blasted his mind. Now his neat sweet ready for the moon base climb. We love to boogie. We love to boogie on a Saturday night. I said we love to boogie. We love to boogie. High school boogie. Jitterbug boogie. We love to boogie on a Saturday night. Tail feathers high, Jitterbug left and smiled to the sky. Wear your black velvet cape and your stovepipe hat. Bebop, baby, the dance is where it at. I love to boogie. Yes, I love to boogie on a Saturday night. I said I love to boogie. I love to boogie. Jitterbug boogie. I love to boogie. I love to boogie on a Saturday night.
Last one, sorry. Last.
I said
I said, oh damn. Ooh, bet you wonder how I knew about your plan to make me do with some other guy that you knew before. When you do all those guys, you know I love you more. Took me by surprise, I must say, when I found out yesterday. Ooh, I hated to the grapevine. Not much longer would you be mine. Ooh, I hated to the grapevine. And I'm just about to lose my mind. Honey, honey, yeah. You know that a man ain't supposed to cry, but these tears are getting hold inside. Losing you in my life, you see, because you mean that much to me. You could have told me yourself that you found someone else. Instead, I hated to the grapevine. Not much longer would you be mine. Ooh, I hated to the grapevine. And I'm just about to lose my mind. Honey, honey, yeah. People say you hide from what you see. Now, from what you hear. I can't help being confused. If it's true, won't you tell me here? Do you plan to let me go? Or the other guy that you knew before? Ooh, I hated to the grapevine. Not much longer would you be mine. Ooh, I hated to the grapevine. And I'm just about to lose my mind. Honey, honey, yeah. Sloppy slipping, Sasquatch sandwich, squirrel flip flop, flipping.
Check this.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. Music loud, women warm, being kicked around since I was born. Never tolerate, that's okay. And you may look the other way, but we can try to understand. And do your time to make
end on this one, but we'll do the extended. Put on your dance.
West Coast kid. Holiday road. Holiday road. Holiday road. Holiday road. West Coast kid. Holiday road. Holiday road. Holiday road. Holiday road. Last one then. Last one. Make it loud. Make it loud. Oh. Make it loud.
Listen. Listen. Listen.
Stop it right there. Stop it right there. Do it. Someone go get 10 center. Go on. Go on, go on, go on. Go on. Why am I dancing on my own right?
bum, bum.
Never been a sinner. I've never sinned. I got a friend in Jesus. So you know that when I die, He's gonna set me up with the Spirit in the sky. Oh, set me up with the Spirit in the sky. That's where I'm gonna go when I die. When I die and the neighbor to rest, I'm gonna go to the place that's the best. Go to the place that's the best.
see the farmer, pinch some eggs, maybe a chicken. Enjoy.
Hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah.
I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling, I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. Lips as sweet as candy, its taste is on my mind. Girl, you got me thirsty for another cup of wine. Got a bug from you, girl, but I don't need no cure. I just stay a victim if I can for sure. All the good love when we're all alone. Keep it up, girl. Yeah, you turn me on. I'm hooked on a feeling, I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. All the good love when we're all alone. Keep it up, girl. Yeah, you turn me on. I'm hooked on a feeling, I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. I'm hooked on a feeling, and I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. I said I'm hooked on a feeling, and I'm high on believing that you're in love
Outside my house.
with me.
She just parked. I gotta go. I'm not gonna put any harm on women. Disclaimer. But I am gonna be having words. I am gonna.